watching out for that buyback. What do we expect?
Well, let me talk a bit about that buyback, right? Because that's where all the excitement is. Now, ICICI Securities has done some interesting analysis, and they have analyzed how the stock performance is prior to the company announcing a buyback and post. And they've covered all the large cap IT companies. And they're saying there is no clear relation between price gains and the buyback announcement as per their data and the analysis. So they're saying in the last 14 instances, and this covers not just Infy and TCS, but even the others like HCL Tech, Wipro, etc. In the last 14 instances, in the 11 out of the last 14 instances, the stocks have actually performed better in the 1 month prior to the buyback versus a month following the buyback. So let's get that data up for you on your screen. So now I've just taken TCS as well as Infosys. Now let's pull up TCS's data in terms of the buyback. These are the earnings estimate. Do we have the buyback data with us in terms of the stock? Okay, so let's, we'll come back and analyze that. Let me quickly run you through what the street is anticipating in terms of the earnings expectations. Well, a dollar revenue growth of about 3.1%, a constant currency revenue growth of closer to about 4.5%. Margins for Infosys are likely to see a very minor expansion, close to about 20.5%, and that's because of the residual impact of the wage hike. The key is going to be on their FY23 guidance. Do they upgrade it like HCL Tech? If they do, it'll come in as a big positive surprise. Currently, the guidance is 14 to 16% on the top line and margins to be closer to the lower end of the 21 to 23%. Deven, would you expect any surprise on Infosys in terms of the earnings?
Well, I think more importantly, I think the earnings definitely would remain strong compared to the others. The important part would be, I think, how much execution they are indicating at. The current challenges possibly in the environment is largely, limiting most of these companies to focus on the execution side of the story. Vis-a-vis every dollar of order win that they have, how much is the execution which is happening? I think that is a ratio that I would like to look at as far as the company's announcement is concerned. And more importantly, what is the quantum of deal that you are basically winning? Many times we look at the deal wins, but which side of the deal wins? Whether it is in $1 billion, which is more important, or below $1 billion, deals which are more important. Sustainability over 5-7 years would mean a lot as far as this particular deal wins are concerned. So these are some of the points definitely one would like to see. Of course, the company is retaining significant amount of cash in the balance sheet, and this buyback is definitely more than welcome at this point of time.
Okay. All right, Deven, I wanted to ask you about some of these metal stocks. Out of nowhere, you have these supply cuts that come about, and suddenly LME prices do a thing of their own. Now, aluminium prices overnight were up by, 5-6% approximately. That's because there were reports that suggested that the US could impose sanctions on Russia. And that would mean that 6-7% of the global supply goes out of the system. That's one of the key reasons why you have Hindalco, Nalco, and even Vedanta. Well, they're trading with some green. What's your take? Realistically, I don't know whether or not this is possible, because in the last 1 year or so, US has taken a fair bit of these aluminium supplies. They tried this earlier in 2018, but in 2019, they called it quits. Do you think this time around they can push it through if yes, aluminium prices remain elevated, and then maybe some of these stocks do well? Your take?
So, Nigel, I think this is extremely going to be challenging. On one side, we are seeing the slowdown conditions in the Western world. On the other side, a sharp fall in the prices have already happened as far as aluminium is concerned. And the important point is that going by the experience of crude oil, the US's strategy of sanctioning Russia is not working well at all. On the contrary, it is proving more beneficial to Russia than proving against it. So from a perspective of looking at this particular aspect, whether the sanction on aluminium or tariff hike for the aluminium could result into a dampening of the supply from Russia, the answer is clearly no. Even though they're one of the largest after China as far as supply of aluminium is concerned in the world market. So very difficult to take a call as far as the commodity price behavior is concerned. I would rather say that we should stay focused on Indian companies where the domestic demand scenario remains extremely promising and the kind of consumption levels are improving. From that perspective, Indian companies are relatively better placed. If the prices are firming up and if they end up getting higher amount of realization in profits, nothing like it. But I do not know whether it will sustain given the kind of reason under which it is operating.
For some stocks, I mean, this might as well be yesterday. It's a repeat performance, basically. Look at Mazgaon Dock. It's up 4%. Garden Reach Shipping, it's the same set, same trio. Garden Reach is up 4.33%. There's Mazgaon, Garden Reach, and Cochin Shipyard, 4.25%. Four each yesterday, 4 each today. So that's quite something. Kalyan Jewelers is another one. We spoke with the management recently. A day ago, I mean, 5.5% higher, stocks at about 102 now, so it's moving up. And the other one which has done very well recently is HBL Power. It's almost at about 120. It's having a pretty phenomenal month so far, and I think the last month also the stock's done very, very well. Deven, do you track this one, HBL Power? Have coverage or not really?
Not really, Prashant. We don't have coverage on this stuff.
Okay, and these defense names, do you have coverage yet?
Yeah, I think so. We keep tracking them, and probably I think some of the companies look interesting. Even Mazgaon Dock that you mentioned, I think they are showing good amount of revenue visibility, around 25-30% kind of a revenue visibility. I think on the growth side is happening for these companies. The bigger challenge would be on maintaining and sustaining the margin front. I think some of these companies, which you would like to see, on one side, the demand scenario is significantly improving given the kind of government's focus on sourcing defense from India. And on the other side, I think many of the defense companies will have a challenge in form of maintaining the margin because government is a big buyer. And over there, I think the margins are unlikely to be on a higher side. So that would be, one challenge that one will have to fill through. But given the strong top line growth projection, I would think that many companies would relatively have better performance compared to their previous years. So wait and see. Of course, Mazgaon Dock remains, one of the promising one of the lot, along with companies like Solar Explosives, which have relatively higher amount of supply to the defense segment.
All right, noted that view, Deven. By the way, the Nifty, it did a nice move. It went towards that 17,080 odd, but it couldn't sustain at those levels. The intraday chart actually will tell you the picture. It's seeing a bit of selling from that top. So we can sustain about that level of around 17,075 that I was talking about. We'll be bracing ourselves for a bit of a bounce. For the time being, though, it's been met with a bit of a hurdle, and that's why we've come off 10 to around 15 points odd. It's going to be quite an exciting weekly expiry is, my reading of this one. For the time being, let's slip into a short break. You come back, Rajesh Kotari of Alpha Accurate will be joining in.